Hello everyone and welcome to Luminar Coffee Break. I'm Angela Andrieux and today we're going to be talking about storytelling in street photography. Specifically, we're going to dive into why street photography typically looks good in black and white, and when you might want to try converting an image to black and white for that particular look, or whether color makes your image stronger. In the end, it's all about telling a story. Street photography often has a human element. It doesn't have to have a person in it, but there's usually a human element that kind of ties it into that particular snapshot of a moment in time and something that connects us to humanity. I love street photography. I love getting out there and photographing the world around me, whether I'm traveling or taking a day through to walk through my own town. It's really neat to capture pictures of the people and the interactions around me. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. I've got an image up from one of our executives actually, and this is an image taken someplace in Asia, and we've got this really cool juxtaposition of old and new. We have the rickshaw driver in this neighborhood that's obviously pretty old. So we have that old and new, and I feel like taking it from color to black and white really helps us get in and get to know our subject. Before we go too much further, I want to take a quick moment to say hello to Pat, Russ, JGmail28, Julie. So glad you guys are all able to join us today. So with black and white, there's a few reasons that black and white is so popular for street photography. The first is that it creates a very timeless sense. We've been looking at black and white photos since photography's been a thing. So when we look at a black and white photo, it's very easy to have that timeless quality that we associate with something that's been around for a while. It also has a way of enhancing drama. Having the stark contrast between black and white can really help you bring out whatever dramatic scene is unfolding in front of you and tell that story. It also has a way of removing distractions. So sometimes a street photo can look really great in color, but often if you remove the color, it has a way of zeroing you in on your subject and really making that story come to life and making everything in the periphery just kind of fall away. It also has a very legacy feel, so you're emulating some of the great masters. We're talking about Henri Cartier-Bresson, Robert Capa, Vivian Maier. They shot extensively in black and white. So in doing so with our street photography, we're emulating those great masters. And so black and white just feels really good for a lot of us when it comes to street photography. I also want to say hello to Harry and Wolfgang. So glad you're here today. All right, let's start some editing. So let's go ahead and dig into this image. Let me show you my before. There's the before right there. That's with color. And you can see that our subject is kind of blocked back in those shadows, and other areas of the image are really bright, which actually detracts and pulls us away from our subject. With the edits that I made, we're able to really focus in on our subject, and we're drawn straight into the rickshaw driver. So let me go ahead and show you exactly what I did. I'm going to go over to Edit to start, and I'm going to go into my history, go all the way down to the bottom, go back to my original, and we will start over. So let's go ahead and let that load. I'm going to go back to templates. There we go. Now there's our original image, uncropped everything. I'm going to start with the for this photo section and go into urban style. And in this section, there's some great looks that look good for street photography in general. But as I said, I want to go for a black and white feel. So I'm going to choose Abbey Street. And I think that's a really good starting point. It gets me close to where I want to be, but I feel like it's initially a little bit flat, and I want to create a lot more contrast. Pat says, a coincidence today, been busy converting some recent pics of my grandkids to black and white and loving the results. That's awesome. So when you're talking about your family portraits too, going into black and white really gives it that legacy, timeless feel. I love doing that with portraits. Okay, back to today's image. Let's go here to our Edit tab now so we can refine the results. I'm going to go to my tools, and I'm going to start with Composition AI. And I can go ahead and click Composition AI and see if it suggests anything for me. In this case, the AI thinks the crop is just fine. I'm not so convinced. Instead, I want to go ahead and I want to do my upright perspective, and this is just going to straighten out the buildings a little bit. There we go. And then I want to go to my ratio, and I want to make this a 16:9. So what I'm going to do there is move this down. You'll see we've propped up most of that open space in the top that really does nothing to help tell our story. And then I'm going to pull that down a little farther so we just take that sky completely out of the equation. And now we can pull that up, excuse me, and get in a little bit closer on our subject. Hey Kevin, so glad you're able to make it today. All right, let me go ahead. I'm going to hit return on my keyboard to go ahead and commit that crop. And now we can work on stylizing this image. The next thing I want to do is go to structure. And I love structure for many, many different styles of photography. And it works so beautifully in black and white, especially when you want to bring out some of those fine details. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that structure up, quite a bit right there. And I think that looks really good. We can turn that off and back on again, and you can see it just crisped up a lot of the details. So from there, what I want to do is go down to super contrast, and here's where we can really start to refine the shadows, midtones, and highlights of our image to really make those areas come out. I do note that I have some really bright areas here in the foreground on the street and up on the side of the building. I want to tone those down, and then I want to wake up some of these shadows right back here, brighten up those shadows, so that way my subject stands out a little bit more from the background. So let's first work on our super contrast here in the highlights section. You can see that with our template, there were already some minute adjustments added. So now we can go ahead and work with that to make it a little bit better. You see if I take that to the left, it's actually brightening up those highlights. I'm going to bring that down to the right, and you'll see that flattens them out a little bit. And I just want to take the edge off of those so they're not so bright and they're not pulling us away from the subject. Let's see here with our midtones, we can pull up our midtones contrast a bit more. And then again, work with that balance. If we go to the left, it's opening things up. We go to the right, it's darkening things down. And I'm actually going to pull that a little bit to the left to brighten up some of those midtones. Again, we're trying to pull our subject out from the background. And then with our shadows contrast, I'm going to pull that up a little bit more as well. And we can go ahead and move that back and forth. You see to the right, that's really blocking up all of those shadows and those blacks. I'm going to go ahead and pull that a little bit to the left. And there we have it. Now let's take a look at our before and our after. I think that's really helped. I think I might actually pull up that highlights contrast a little bit more and then bring that balance a little bit further to the right just to tone down those brightest highlights. All right, so I've done my global adjustments. Now what I really want to do is do a few adjustments that'll just brighten up our subject, and then a couple that will darken down the exterior. So let's go over to our local masking, and let's first start with our subject. I'm going to click on Add, go to Basic, and I'm going to do a Radial Mask. Now I want this to affect the center here, which is our subject. So I'm going to click on this button here to the right, and I'm going to draw a circle right over our subject. Now as I do that, the line here in the middle circle, is where that effect is going to be most prevalent, and then it's going to blend out to the outer circle. Now I can adjust that blend if I want. I can even grab these handles on the side and make this a little bit more oblong. So I'm going to go ahead and just adjust the size here to get it really right where I want. And if you want a visual representation of what that mask is covering, you can always click the ellipses and click on Show Mask. And this is going to show you exactly where that mask is being affected. Everything in red will get whatever effects we do here in this basic panel. I think that's really good coverage for what I want. I'm going to go ahead and click on the ellipses again and hide mask. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and start with exposure, and I'm going to bring the exposure up, maybe that not quite that much, probably right about there. And then I also want to maybe bring up some structure. We're going to add a little bit of extra added detail there. And I might pull back a little bit on the shadows. Let's see here. Oops, I'm sorry, not pull back. We want to pull up and brighten up those shadows just a hair. So there we go. Let's go ahead and let that render. All right, now we can turn that off and back on again. And you can see how just that small change draws us straight into our subject. Now let's work a little bit with the area around our subject outside of that and further accentuate that drawing into the subject effect. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this mask. So I'm going to go to the ellipses and click on Copy. And then I'm going to go to Add. We're going to do another basic. Go ahead and let that load up there. There we go. And now I'm going to go to the ellipses and I'm going to hit Paste. And now I have a duplicate mask of what I just did. And if I go ahead and make adjustments here, it's going to further make those adjustments on the middle of the image. I actually want it to go on the outside. So what I'm going to do here to show you what's happening is go ahead and Show Mask. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the ellipses again and go to Invert. And this is going to make it so it's everything outside of our subject. So everything in the red will be affected. Now I'm going to go ahead and click back on the ellipses and hide the mask. And here I'm going to bring the exposure down ever so slightly. And I'm going to darken those highlights a little bit more because I think they're still a little bit dramatic, especially over here on the left. And I'm also going to pull back a little bit, not so much that it's obvious, but just pull back a little bit on the structure. I want that middle of the image to be the most highly detailed area, and that just softens some of those details at the edges and again really draws you in. So let me go ahead and turn that off and back on again. And this is really similar to creating a vignette, but you have a lot more control when you use the Radial Mask and you have all of these functions that you can work with. I'm also going to go back now that I've added these adjustments and add an actual vignette because the quality of it is a little bit different. So I'm going to go back to my tools. And as I'm editing here, I'm noticing that there's a little bit of a distracting line here at the top. My crop wasn't quite right. So before I go farther, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to go to the Composition AI. You'll see that brings my crop window back up. And I'm just going to ever so slightly move that crop down to where that roof line there intersects with the rest of it. We don't have that little gap space up there. And I think that works better. I'll hit return. And now we'll add the vignette. Let me go ahead and scroll down. Oops, I went scroll too far. There's my vignette tool. And let me take a quick look here at the comments and see if everybody's getting their questions answered. Let's see here. Some commentary on black and white. Awesome. Harry wants to know if I can do something to remove that sewer grate. That's a good question. We have a little one here, and we have this one here. Probably could use either the clone and stamp or the erase tools, definitely to get rid of that one. This one I think might be a little tougher, but we can certainly give it a try. Let's go ahead and add our vignette first, and then we'll give that a go. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my amount slider all the way down to -100. I'm going to make my size smaller. Go into my advanced settings. I'm going to bring that feather up really, really high because I want a nice, smooth, soft transition. I don't want a harsh line that says, bam, I added a vignette. I don't want anybody to really think that there's a vignette. I just want to draw them in without them having to really think about it. And then I'll also add a little bit of inner light here. And this is basically kind of duplicating or enhancing upon what we did in those local adjustments. So it's doing it kind of twice for an even more pronounced effect. Now I'll take that amount slider and I'll pull that back up and adjust it to where it looks natural, it looks nice, and I think right about there looks fantastic. So let's go ahead and take a look at our before and our after. I think that looks great. Now let's go ahead and see about removing some of those distractions there in the foreground, those grates. Let's go here to our erase tool. And you know, a lot of times when I'm doing street photography, I usually leave those things alone because it's that whole snapshot of a moment in time of humanity. It's obviously a personal choice. I kind of take street photography to be a little bit more journalistic as opposed to artistic, but your photos, your choice. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom and maybe make my brush a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to brush in over that grate there in the foreground and click erase and see how that goes. Give it a moment to render there. And while I'm looking at that, let me see if there's any other questions here. Julie's asking, would the dodge and burn tool do the same? You know, dodge and burn can do a lot of those similar things, but I prefer with dodge and burn, I prefer to use the local masking. I feel like I have a lot more control. You have control over your exposure, your shadows, your highlights, and if you're using a color image, you have control over some of those aspects as well. Whereas with dodge and burn, it's just darken and lighten in an amount. And I just feel like I can go back and edit and refine it much more easily with local masking than dodge and burn. But dodge and burn is a great tool, and if that works well for you, then definitely make use of that. All right. Kevin wants to know, when you erase, does the zoom level matter? It really can when you're zooming in and getting at something really detailed. So we can go ahead for this next area, which is this grate here. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. And let me zoom in and show you why. Go into 100%. And we see that there's a lot of different textures here in the ground around this grate. So I'm going to go ahead and, now that we're zoomed in, let that load, finish loading, come on. You can go ahead and just paint that on there. Hopefully that's going to, there we go. So now I've painted that in, and I can go to the deselect brush, and I feel like I got a little overzealous there with those edges. I can come in and clean up that selection a little bit. And the more you're zoomed in, the more control you're going to have over that to get a better selection. And the closer you can get into the edges of what you're trying to erase without actually coming back over them, because you want to definitely overlap into the area you're trying to clone in, but you don't want to go too far because that's just more pixels that the program has to calculate. So let me go ahead and click erase. Let's see what we get with that. And Robert thinks leaving the large grate as a visual anchor. That's also a great point. Let's see how this does. I think it's going. Give it just a moment there. The erase tool can be a little bit slow sometimes. There we go. So there, it did a great job of getting rid of it, but if you wanted to leave it there, you certainly could. Again, it comes back to personal choice. I'm going to click fit to screen. We can see the entire image as a whole, and then take a look again at the before. Actually, maybe I need to come out of the erase tool to get that to load. Give that a second. All right, so now there's the before. Come on. My computer's being slow, so apologies, everyone. There's our before. So you can see the grates, the color, everything that we kind of minimize, and then this version, how it just draws us in. Like I said, removing those grates is a completely personal choice. A lot of times when I do street photography, I leave in a lot of those little details. Now, if there was a piece of trash in the street, something that could have been picked up that I should have picked up, and I didn't see it while it was there, I would definitely clone that out. But if it's an architectural feature, I'll probably leave it there. At most, I would do some dodging and burning or using that local masking tool to minimize it rather than getting rid of it. But that's just my personal choice for street photography, going for more of a journalistic style than an artistic rendering. So whatever makes you happy. Thank you, Harry. I'm glad you like that. Definitely check out the upgrade. It's, if you haven't tried it yet, get the trial, see how it runs on your machine, see how you like it, play with it, and keep coming to these coffee breaks. Vanelli and I walk you through a lot of different techniques, a lot of different things you can do that you might not think of when you first jump into the program. So hopefully this expands your level of creativity and gives you some ideas of what you can work with. Definitely, if you have any other questions, put them into the comments and the chat. I'll do my best to get those answered. Let's see here. Kevin says he likes both versions of the great personal game time choice. Absolutely. All right. So if you guys like these episodes, definitely give us a thumbs up, and it lets us know that you like us being here. If you have ideas, subjects that you want to see covered in a future coffee break, please don't hesitate to put those in the comments. Let us know what you want to learn. And Vanelli and I always read those comments, and we'll get back to as many of you as we can and add as many of those things to our queue as we can. So with that, I want to wish you guys a wonderful day. Let's see, today is Tuesday, so I will be back with you on Thursday. Vanelli will be with you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon, and get out there and make some photos. I'll see you later. Bye-bye, everyone.